Symbols is what we're going to be having a look at today, and it's the next step in religious language. We have symbols, language games, and myths to cover. So this lesson and 2 more lessons before we've finished religious language. So hopefully you've not found it too difficult. And remember, please email me. You've all got my email address, and if you haven't, check Show My Homework, because I'm putting it on there every day. If you are stuck or confused, or if I am setting too much work or too little work, the only people I really hear from seems to be Caitlin and Ella, really. I don't hear from anybody else, so it's a little bit worrying. And that you are expected to still be working, and we are expected to be in communication. So please make sure you are emailing me, particularly because I'm asking you to email me every session with some of the work, and I want to see some evidence of it. So whether or not it's just photos or a typed document which you can send me a copy of, I don't mind, but I do want to be somehow tracking that you are doing the work. So thank you to Ella and Caitlin, who are communicating with me, but the rest of you, I've heard nothing. So can you please start informing me where you're at with religious language? Do you like the videos? Are you finding them useful? Is the pace of work okay? I'm learning through this just like you are. This has never happened before. So oh gosh, so many messages, sorry. Yeah, the more feedback I've got from you, the better, basically. Okay. Symbols. I want to start with a short knowledge recall. So you should be able to do this in about 4 minutes or so. It's not going to take too long at all. It's not particularly difficult, but I'm going to start with these more often because it does aid your revision, particularly now because I'm not going to be in necessarily to be able to guide your revision as I would do normally. So last lesson we had a look at analogy. So what is analogy and who are the philosophers associated with it? 2 weeks ago, or 2 lessons ago, we had a look at via negativa. So what's the good thing about it and what's the bad thing about it? Last topic was secularization. And again, for those of you that weren't in for the last week or so of school, you've also got a bit of work to catch up on secularization. So you've got the hexagons, which again, nobody has sent me photos of. So you've got the hexagons, and you've got a little bit about wealth and money. So please make sure you're doing that. But who is Grace Davies, and what does she mean by believing without belonging? And then last term, can you tell me what proportionalism and natural moral law is? So 4 or 5 minutes to do this as your starter. I also just wanted to take this time to recap what we've done so far, just so that you can get your notes into order, and just so that you can really be confident on all the sections that we've had a look at. And again, if you're not, please email me, because in a couple of weeks, in about 4 or 5 lessons, once we've finished the course or finished this section, I'm going to set you 2 lessons of revision, and then I'm going to set you like a mini mock for religious language, because it's the only way now really that I can see or access any of your work. So I wanted to recap what we've gone through already. So we've done the verification principle, the strong version of the verification principle. We've done the Vienna Circle and the logical positivists. We've done the weak verification principle and had a look at how they both differ. We've done the falsification principle. We've had a look at via negativa, and I just thought I'd highlight there. I know I've spoken about them in the videos, or they are in some of the reading, and they're definitely in the textbook, which I highlighted to on page 33 a couple of videos ago. But there are 2 key words. So there's the cataphatic and the apophatic way. Both of those are important for via negativa. So if you've missed that for whatever reason, can you please make sure that you understand what those 2 key words mean and how they link to via negativa? And we've just finished analogy. So use this almost as like a checklist. Do you feel confident with all of these? If you don't, again, please email me. Moving on to symbols. Symbols is a really effective way to have a look at religious language, and we use symbols every day in our lives to portray meaning. So one of the most common symbols is the poppy, which we see every year. Then obviously you've got the symbol of the nation's flag. You've got symbols of tattoos, which are really, really meaningful for people. So symbols are really poignant to our lives, they can be secular. I mean, symbols don't have to have any religious meaning to them. So they can be secular, but symbols are also really, really important within religion. So the symbol of the crucifix, Jesus dying on the cross, is really symbolic for people because it helps to remind them of the ultimate sacrifice that Jesus made. So symbols are really important, and that's why we're looking at whether or not symbols become a meaningful way to talk about God. I've done that bit. Okay, Paul Tillich is the man that you are wanting to have a look at here. And you will have a look at and you will understand more about Tillich as time goes on throughout the specification, because he makes several appearances. So Tillich says that symbols remind us of things. They are iconic. Now, that is 100% true, because the symbol, like I was saying earlier on, the symbol of the crucifixion reminds Christians of the ultimate sacrifice that Jesus had to make. The symbol of the poppy that we all wear is a symbol of all the soldiers in past conflicts, but also current conflicts, which are struggling and losing their lives. So symbols do remind us of things, even things like road signs. You'll see a road sign, which is a symbol of maybe like a man with a shovel or something, and you know that symbol reminds you that you need to perhaps slow down in your car because there are people working on the road surfaces. And then Tillich makes a bit of a leap there and says that religious language should do the same thing. Religious language should remind us of God, and it shouldn't necessarily be talking directly about God, because for Tillich, any form of religious language, whether it be analogy or via negativa or falsification, any form of religious language will inevitably fall into the trap of anthropomorphism in one way or another. So Tillich is then making a bit of a leap to say that symbols should then be used in religion to quantify and to make meaningful the way in which we talk about God. He also said that symbols are really, really emotional and they are emotive, and that again is true because some of the symbols which we've spoken about already, the crucifix is it has a symbolic meaning for Christians. So he kind of builds on that a little bit more, and he removes it away from symbols in terms of like artwork or in terms of items, and he says that language, when we talk about God, language is symbolic. So when we say things like God is good, it's meant to be taken in a symbolic way, not a literal way, because if we take it in a literal way, then it anthropomorphizes God. If we take it as a symbolic meaning where we can infer something from it and we get an emotional connection with it, then that actually is a meaningful way to talk about God. Again, Tillich goes on to say that symbols are really deep and powerful and unlock something within everybody's souls that we would not be able to reach otherwise. So if we use symbolic language to talk about God in a meaningful way, then Tillich argues we will have a deeper connection with faith and a deeper connection with God. Now, to try and illustrate his point with the idea that symbols and kind of things have a really emotional meaning or do have emotional connections, what I would like you to do is to select for songs or paintings or TV programs or films or sculptures or pieces of music or whatever, okay, it doesn't have to be four of the same thing, it could be a mixture, and try and assess whether or not Tillich is right to claim that the arts, so paintings, music, TV programs, etc., is he right by saying that symbols function on a deep level, on a spiritual and emotional level, and therefore that's the best way to talk about God? Now, Don't know if you're interested, but these are the three things which I think are really, really poignant symbols in my life. I realise that because this is a YouTube video that you're going to be watching, you won't be able to click on the hyperlink. So if you care, I will link them down below onto Show My Homework anyway, so that you can see. But the first is one of my favourite pieces of classical music. I absolutely love it. It really makes me feel calm and grateful and appreciative, so particularly poignant in times like these. So it's a really lovely piece of classical music that I love if I really need to just kind of calm down. The second one is one of my favourite pieces of music which teaches you a lesson. It's a bit of a moral piece of music, and I love it because it reminds me of my nan and my mum, who were cheering me up one day after I had a really, really horrible day at school when I was a teenager, going through all the kind of the school bullies and all that kind of stuff. So that's a really lovely message behind that piece of music, and the lyrics are brilliant. So please listen to that one if you get a chance. And then the third one is the film trailer for Blood Diamond. So it's one of my favourite films of all time. One, because I'm slightly obsessed with Leonardo DiCaprio. I love him. And then two, because it's a film which is kind of true to life. So it's not a true film, but the words and the very, very end of the film is really poignant, and it shows the true nature and cost of human greed. And then the third reason why I love this film so much is because it reminds me and inspires me to try and be a better human every day. So those are my three symbols, which I do think have a real emotional connection. So for me, Tillich is right in saying that symbols is a really meaningful way to talk about God. What I would like you to do now is, on Show My Homework, I've linked a 2-page sheet which is about all of the information about Paul Tillich and his ideas to do with symbols and how it's meaningful in religious language. I would like you to black out the useless information. So I know you hate doing this because you'd rather highlight, but highlighting basically means that you keep all the information just in case, and people tend to highlight anything and everything, so highlighting is not massively effective. Whereas if you are blacking out and getting rid of all the useless information, you really have to think about what it is you want to keep. So black out all the information about Paul Tillich and his use of symbols when having a look at religious language, please. Finally then, just to round this off, a few strengths. So symbols in religious language is good because humanistic words cannot adequately describe God. God is this ineffable, kind of amazing, much better, much beyond human comprehension. So any form of humanistic language is never going to be good enough for God. So any way of talking about him, whether it be through analogy or via negativa or falsification or verification, is always going to fall into that trap of anthropomorphism, and it's never going to be good enough to be talking about God. And then another way is that this is actually really credible. It's a credible alternative to analogy, because analogy, again, it has its flaws, because if you have no idea about what you're talking about in the first place, analogy is not going to help you. Whereas symbols will, even if you're not entirely sure about something, will have an emotional connection with you one way or another. Weaknesses, however, there's a man called Randall who says that language is symbolic, but it's not cognitive. So unlike art, and like art, symbols do not tell us anything about external reality. So if I show you a symbol of, I don't know, a flower, for example, that's not going to tell you anything about an external reality. So it still gets us no closer to understanding this kind of concept which we as humans are not going to be able to fully understand. One of the best weaknesses, I think, for this is that symbols change over time. The meanings of symbols change over time. And one of the best examples of that is the ancient Hindu peace symbol being changed into the symbol for the swastika for the Nazis. So it's the same symbol, but it's changed over time. So symbols change their meaning. So what if we are affirming a symbol to God, i.e. maybe the cross or the crucifixion, and then over time that symbol changes? Are we going to be able to have that connection? Does it mean that the meaningfulness of the symbol when we're equating it to God is going to change or weaken or get stronger maybe as time progresses? That's a really difficult one. And then symbols can be interpreted in different ways. So I've given you 3 things which are really symbolic for me. So a piece of classical music, a piece of music which has got brilliant lyrics, and then the trailer to the film Blood Diamond. And they all connect with me on an emotional level, but you might watch those or have a look at those and think, what on earth is all of this? So they're interpreted in different ways, which means that they are subjective. Symbols and language are subjective. And how can you have something which is meaningful if everyone's going to have a different way of looking at it in the first place? Hopefully you've got something from that. Again, email me please. I am not getting enough emails from you to show me that you've done the work, to say that you perhaps like the videos, because if you don't like them, I won't spend my time doing them. And I'm not getting enough emails to say if you're confused or need some more resources, or need a PDF of the textbook or whatever. So please start emailing me. It's a bit of we've got to work together on this one. So I look forward to hearing from you, and we've got 2 more lessons left of religious language.